begins.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
I'm going to be their biggest and harshest critic, but I'm also their #1 fan.
All right, so here's how we handled this yesterday, which is important to understand for how we're going to do this today. We picked 6 players with the most to prove. We excluded from this list Andre Jones Jr., KJ Henry, Dax Milne, Kaz Allen, Sadiq Charles, and Chris Paul because we talked about them in their individual position battles or their dual position battles. You get what I'm saying? We picked 6 other guys, so let's see how they did in last night's game. Player number 1, Quan Martin. Mixed bag, to say the least. He continues to compete, and he continues to grow, and he continues to learn, and he continues to get better, and he continues to suffer from not getting to play with Cam Curl. I do think that it's important to remember how much better the communication is on the back end of this defense when Cam Curl is out there. It happened last year, and this year, when Cam hasn't been out there, it hasn't been as good. In practice and everything. And Quan is a guy who's been stretched very, very thin intellectually, not because he's not smart, but because they have put so much on his plate. Multiple safety positions. And it's like one thing for a guy like Jeremy Reeves to do it, who's been in the league for 6, 7, 8 years. Like, Quan Martin is trying to learn how to play NFL football, and he's trying to learn how to play NFL football at least 3, if not 4 different positions. So it's really, really tough on him. This is just a tough ask. So with that said, he just keeps going out there, keeps sticking to it, and eventually is able to make a play. Has a 59-yard return after the interception on a play where he and Rachad Wildgoose do not communicate very well. A little bit of a bump. You wind up in trail technique, but you don't want to trail by that much. But he shows you why he's a second-round pick. Recovery speed, stick-to-itiveness, plays with good technique through the hands, ultimately comes down with the ball, and then a nice little return. Here is what Ron Rivera said after the game about Jartavius Quan Martin, his second-round pick.
I think he learned from last week. I think the biggest thing more than anything else was he put himself in position to make a play, and he did it. There's a lot of things that we can be better at as a team, and I know he knows he can be better too. So, as we go through this, we're going to grow and we're going to learn from this. Yeah,
that's not I actually liked a lot of the competitiveness. I liked some other plays that he made, but he's got some learning to do. And I think the other thing too is in the regular season, they can probably pigeonhole him a little bit more and be like, all right, man, this week, we want you to be ready for this package. We want you to be ready for these route combinations, and you're going to be playing with these guys. And right now, he's swimming in the whole ocean. And they're going to put a little box around him when they get to the regular season, and it'll be a lot better for him. And that box can grow, but exposing him to all of this stuff early is the right move. So no game planning, and especially think of the plays he got beat on. It's combination stuff. It's not like, hey, man, line up. Can you handle one-on-one coverage? Or, hey, drop to this spot. It's, hey, Emmanuel Forbes and Quan Martin, we've got this combination coverage. I've got this guy, you've got that guy. Unless this happens and they switch, and then you've got that guy and I've got this guy. And, oh, God, they did the thing. Which one was it? We both went with that guy. This guy's open. And then he takes a bad this guy's Zay Flowers in that very tortured analogy. That wasn't really an analogy. The tortured example. And then you take a bad pursuit angle, and that's not a great look. But is what it is. I think Quan's going to be fine, is the long and the short of it. Smart guy, tough kid. Learning is good as long as you're actually doing the learning and not just making mistakes aimlessly. I think the same can be said in a lot of respects for Rachad Wildgoose, who played last night outside. I thought this was interesting from Rivera on why he decided to rest most of his defensive starters and how Wildgoose winds up in a role that when he's quote-unquote starting, he's not actually in because he typically plays nickel.
I think he learned from last week.
That's not the right one. It did it to me again. All right, here's Ron.
A couple things, but we decided we feel really good about where we are. We got some guys that we wanted to be careful with, and that was the biggest decision on the defensive side, just because of the familiarity they have with what they're doing. And we just thought we'd do that.
Was Ron fighting the microphone? What's going on there? Is he in a little fisticuffs with the?
I'm
the
not
mic?
sure, but the Commanders usually have technical difficulties sometimes.
They've had a lot of them in camp. Hopefully it's preseason for everybody, but preseason's coming to an end. We'll get the microphone situation straightened out. What happens, though, because they rest Fuller, they rest St. Juste, is that Wildgoose winds up playing outside when he's a good player in the nickel, and outside's just not his thing, and he hasn't practiced there quite as much. And so, again, the communication issues with him and Martin on the play where Martin has to do the big makeup. It's hard for me to crush him on the touchdown that he gives up. Clearly, the Ravens like the matchup. It's something they saw during the week during joint practices, and they went right after him. But he also, he rips that ball out at the end, and I'm not entirely convinced that wasn't an incomplete pass. Anyway, they called it a touchdown. It is what it is. You like the competitiveness, but I tend to think that he's going to have a hard time making this roster because they keep wanting him to step up and make plays on the outside, and he's been given plenty of opportunities because teams are going after him and hasn't gone particularly well for Rachad Wildgoose. He has the penalty to get them down into the red zone in the first place on that drive. So, yeah. All right, James Smith-Williams. We had a special eye on him because we wanted to see what he would do lined up at the 3 technique. I actually don't think he lined up there a ton. He played well on the edge. Reminded you why he was the guy last year. Gets a couple of pressures. Plays the run very well. Has, I think, a tackle for loss in there. And then, how about a guy who his roster spot is 100% set? He's out there just, working on stuff on special teams. He's out there playing special teams because he's going to play it in the regular season. And he busts his butt to go and then dives into the end zone. Not the most graceful dive, James, but a dive to save the ball down at the 1-yard line. You just love the hustle. You love the competitiveness. I think it was a good night for James Smith-Williams, even we didn't really see a ton of the thing that we were watching for. Ricky Stromberg, on the other hand, as we move to number 4 in our pick 6, Stromberg and Daniels, we had as kind of a combo, the rookie offensive lineman. Stromberg played really well at guard, to the point that he's on the team and is probably going to be active on game days because he gives you a backup center and a backup guard option, which is not what we thought literally a week ago before they had put him there. And Logan said it on the podcast this morning when he scouted him. He did not think he could play guard in the NFL, but he showed kind of a comfortability there that was unexpected for a guy that's played he played some guard at Alabama, but early he played mostly center. Hasn't played in a long time, and to just step in at the NFL level and be like, yeah, I got this. It's impressive. Doesn't have great mobility or anything, which would become a limiting factor for the offense if he had to play guard. But your pass game is set, your power run game is set. You're just probably not going to stick him out on the edge on a wide receiver screen, which is good. Braeden Daniels, also, Logan said he had a pretty solid night. I didn't watch him a ton, and I've only watched the game twice, so I haven't gotten to the Braeden Daniels cut yet. But he held his own. He's continued to grow, and I think that's the most important thing. He's grown to the point that you still would rather redshirt him this year, but if he has to play, you're not terrified like you were in the spring. Number 5, Curtis Hodges in our pick 6 at 6. 6 guys who had something to prove last night. A couple of drops. He's targeted 3 times. Only comes down with 1 catch. He played well in the run game, but there's, one of them is a really tough catch. The other one, you got to make that play. Especially when you're fighting for a roster spot. You have the opportunities there. Go prove you belong on the team. And he just didn't make the plays. His potential is outrageous, but he just is not consistent, and he's consistently not finished in camp. I think there's too much stacking against him right now. I'm going to, spoiler alert, have him off the roster. Cameron Cheeseman, last but not least. He rock skipped a snap. You can't do that. Not this deep into camp, not this deep into the, hey, we're working on our technique project. I don't know that means they're going to move on from him. I tend to doubt it. Ron is really stubborn on certain things, and I think this is going to be one that he's pretty stubborn on because they invested a lot in him for a long snapper. You shouldn't really draft long snappers. They not only drafted him, but they traded up for him. But they got to at least bring in competition. If they find someone who can do what they wanted Cheeseman to do on a more consistent basis, then you can't be having long snapper problems in the NFL. There's just too many capable ones out there. So, Cameron Cheeseman. Not a good night, broski. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, as that was our pick 6 at 6, time for roster projection. Day after game, it's what we do. 53-man roster. If we had to pick it today, how would it look? You'll find out next on the Team 980.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.